Hijab in India is, in my understanding and in my knowledge and in my experience, hijab in India is very recent. Our nanis and dadis were never in hijab.
हम भारतीय नागरिक हैं और हमें अपनी इच्छा से जिंदगी गुजारने का अधिकार है और हम स्वतंत्र हैं, कुछ भी पहने, कैसे भी रहें, और ये हमारे आर्टिकल 14 में हमें दिया गया है कि हमारा मौलिक अधिकार है, तो इसको अगर कोई छीनता है तो ये बिल्कुल गलत है.
For me, Islam is the first feminist religion that gave me the choice to marry the person I want to marry, that gave me the choice to study, to work, and to own property. As far as Muslim society in India is concerned, yes, there is a kind of minorityism that has crept into the society, that we don't take normal, healthy decisions.
Right now, those who are opposing to hijab are not coming from a point of feminism. Let's be very, very clear on that.
Hi, I'm Shoma Chaudhury. Thanks for watching Enquiry. It's been a hyper-disturbing week watching students in Karnataka clashing over religious symbols. There can be very little debate about how wrong it is for gangs of boys wearing saffron or otherwise to be heckling girls, and as little debate about what should matter more for India, to allow girls to study or worry about their dress code. The Constitution, of course, guarantees every citizen the right to practice their own religion. But having said that, there are other tricky questions. What does wearing the hijab signify? Is it an act of defiance, patriarchal compulsion, or personal choice? Is the surge of the Hindu right forcing one to defend Muslim conservatism? What is the churn within the Muslim community itself? And is discussing that playing into Hindutva narratives? To discuss all of this, I have a fantastic set of guests on Enquiry today. We have ZAKIA SOMAN, who's a Muslim women's activist and the convener of the Bharathiya Muslim Mahila Andolan, who's fighting to create modernity within the framework of the Sharia and Islam. There's SHEEBA ASLAM FEHMI, who's also a Muslim feminist and who identifies as a neo-Muslim. There's Jahanara, an activist with the Bharathiya Muslim Mahila Andolan, and POOJA PRASANNA, who's the deputy editor of the News Minute, who's been reporting on the ground in Karnataka. Thank you very much for joining me on the show.
Thank you, Shoma.
Pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, Zakia, I wanted to start with you. You know, how do you frame this whole hijab, saffron scarf controversy, as it is being called? How do you interpret it, and how would you frame it?
So, when it started, it was like a simple case of disciplinary action or something like that in an educational institute. But very soon, in 3-4 days, it sort of exploded into like a full-fledged Hindu-Muslim conflict. And all kinds of vested interests, religious groups, political groups affiliated to Hindutva, and even some also Muslim radical groups jumped into the fray. And then it became an all-out war. And it's not surprising because the kind of politics that we have been witnessing in the last so many years, politics of religious hatred and religious division. So then it became a kind of a full demonstration of that. And the very, very extreme kind of positions, you know, on every side.
Yeah.
And then the scarves, saffron scarves and saffron turbans being distributed to the male students and also to the female students to counter the hijab. So this kind of competitive religiosity. And I mean, in the first place, why are we singling out the girls in hijab? Because those who are attacking the girls in hijab do not believe in secularism. And I mean, all of them are on record decrying secularism as an alien value, as a Western concept. And all of them are believers in majoritarian supremacism. And they clearly do not subscribe to the constitutional values of justice, equality, diversity, pluralism, and secularism. So I mean, it's a bit rich that they find it an offense to see the girls in hijab going to the college.
I think it's unequivocal. I think there's no gray area in the zone that to prevent students wearing a headscarf to enter a college or a school. I mean, it's constitutionally protected. I think it's, you know, just the culture of our country And it's common sense that you can't deny someone education just because of what they're wearing. And the manner in which they are being opposed by student groups, men, goons, it's hard to distinguish anymore. Just the manner of it, I think there's just no gray area in how heinous that is, But first, I wanted to come to you, Pooja. You've been reporting from the ground in Karnataka, as your other colleagues at the News Minute have. What is your understanding of why this has flared up like this? Is this just politically motivated, or is there a kind of cultural tension, social tension that has been brewing in the region?
I think it's a bit of everything because, many students I spoke to and also people who are members of the ABVP or Hindu Jargon Vedike, they went on record to say that this has nothing to do with them. They're not organizing any of these protests. But when I spoke to the students, I did see that there is some sort of a backing. So it is almost impossible on both sides, mind you, to take politics out of what's happening. But that said, I think this was something that has been brewing for a while. If you've seen the developments in Karnataka over the last 1 year or so, particularly since the current chief minister took over, we've seen several state-sanctioned programs that seem lopsided, to put it very mildly. Right. And also the statements that we've seen of several ministers, be it the Home Minister, be it the Education Minister, they seem to be operating from a space where they have already declared that anybody wearing a hijab is doing so with malified intentions to create tensions. They're talking about conspiracies. So it looks like the state that is expected to protect the space for everybody in itself is taking sides. So it's all come together, different reasons. And which is why I think in a matter of 2 to 3 days, we saw the spread from like 2 colleges in Udupi to, as of now, I think about 12 districts across the state at least.
Yeah. No, and the fact that schools, colleges have had to be shut down, it's really, really horrific, But just before I come to SHEEBA and Jahanara, I wanted to further ask you that why did this suddenly flare? So one, as you just said, sadly, the BJP government at the center, as well as Karnataka and elsewhere, are creating an atmosphere of tension and hatred out of which a lot of things are bubbling. But specific to this college incident in December, when the 6 students were suddenly not allowed to enter college and they sat on the protest, why did it suddenly erupt? Like schools don't change their rules overnight. Why was there this sudden shutting out of these 6 students? And were they always wearing hijab, or had it just what is new about this?
What happened is the college says, and we've tried speaking to the principal also, the college insists that at no point did they allow girls to wear hijab inside classrooms. They say we have no issues if they want to wear it within the college campus, but before they enter the classes, they have to remove their headscarves and walk inside. Some of these girls, the 6 girls that we're speaking about, were not wearing hijab in the past, but suddenly decided to wear, and they produced a few photographs to support, their demand, saying that in the past, some of the students have been allowed to wear hijab. So suddenly, why is it that we're being stopped? So that is what started the tensions. But that said, the region that we're talking about, the coastal part of Karnataka, has seen several such confrontations, not just over the past few months, but over the past few years. In fact, one college in Chikmagalur district, which is close to where this college is, in a place called Koppa, over the last 4 to 5 years, this has been taking place. And the parents are called into the college for a meeting, and there's some sort of compromise worked out each time. In January, much before it became as big as it is currently, there were tensions in that college, and the college made it clear that, okay, as a compromise, we will not allow saffron shawls, nor will we allow hijab. But it looks like everyone's taking cue from each other, So it's very difficult to pinpoint who started this first. But I think that said, both sides are backed by political parties. And, I will not say that all girls who are insisting that they should be allowed to wear hijab are politically motivated. Some of them have been wearing hijab in the past as well. But yes, some of them are trying to make a political statement too.
So I'll come back to you to understand what is this assertion of politics. Because the Hindutva project is so large, and it's, of course, the government in power, so it's majoritarian. We understand it. There's a lot of pushback on it. But when you're saying that perhaps some of the Muslim girls were also making a political statement, I'd like to come back to that. But first, Sheeba, let me ask you, how do you see this, as I said, the condemnation of what is happening is unequivocal. I don't think there can be any discussion about that. But vis-a-vis what we're hearing, is it competitive politics? How do you see the hijab? You grew up in a communist family. You come from the left tradition, but you identify as a Muslim feminist. How do you see the hijab and what do you understand about this?
Thank you, Shoma. Well, as far as this particular incident is concerned, people like me are surprised. We are astonished to see that the way it has escalated into a full-blown, kind of a precursor to a civil war kind of a situation where both the factions are out in the open and nobody is, have any qualms about, saying certain things or not saying certain things. The way that one particular Muslim girl was confronted by a horde of, saffron-clad or gamcha-clad boys from the campus and outside. The majority of them were from the outside the campus. So it is something that is being engineered over there. As far as the two parties are concerned, who are the two parties now? It is between the lumpens of the BJP and RSS and the burqa-clad Muslim women now. So it is no more between the administration and the girls or the school authorities or the girls or the education ministry or the girls. And the way that today Justice Krishna has, diverted the matter to the higher bench, the stronger bench. That also tells me that something is brewing over there, and maybe if it is a legal thing only, then it is going to take several months. But if it is not a legal thing and they are going to allow to escalate it, it is really bad ominous, and I'm fearing for very worst kind of a situation that may erupt any moment over there. As far as this whole hijab, Muslim girls hijab in Udupi is concerned, I fail to understand that I understand that it is a all girls college. And in all girls college, why were they insisting to carry on with their hijab in the classroom? I want to know this, because we all understand that hijab is to, avoid the male gaze. So in a girls' college, if it is a girls' college, and maybe Pooja may inform us all here that if it is a girls' college and they are insisting, and the college authorities just asking them to take off their hijab outside the classroom only, then was it such a big issue for them? And how do they interpret Islam, their Islam, that asks them to be in this particular attire among the women? So these are the certain concerns. But the larger concern is that, as we all say, that fascism is a process. It is not an event. We are going through the process, and the process is really escalating. And we always knew that Karnataka is in a tinderbox kind of a situation. We have been hearing comments from the famous or infamous MP from there. I think we have to interrogate it in a very different manner. It is no more a hijab issue over there.
Yeah, so Sheeba, like I said, that there's so many issues involved here, and I'll just kind of quickly say them so that the audience knows we're going to really examine all of that. There's the immediate news environment, and there, like I said, I'm using a moderator's prerogative to say that there's no gray area in that what is happening in the manner in which this entire face-off has been constructed. I think someone tweeted that if it was a single Hindu girl being attacked by a mob of Muslim boys wearing skull caps and shouting Allahu Akbar, I think the shock levels would have been even higher, and I think we should stop calling them students. If that's how they're going to behave, you've taken away the right to be a student. So there's the immediate environment of what is going on in the confrontation. I think that's horrible and we don't need to discuss it. But there are other issues that are being raised about a uniform within a school, the right to freedom, which is constitutionally granted if girls want to wear this. There's also a hierarchy about those who are making political statements, those who do it culturally. And then my show, typically, we don't only talk about the news, but try to use it to talk about deeper issues. So I want to also all of us to address what does the hijab really mean for Muslim women themselves, and so we'll move the discussion beyond the obvious and look at some of the deeper issues involved. जहानारा, मैं आपसे पूछने चाह रही थी कि आप हिजाब पहनती हैं, आप बुर्का पहनती हैं, और आप कह रही थी जब आप बाहर जाती हैं तो आप नकाब भी पहनती हैं। तो आपके लिए ये पूरा समस्या जो कर्नाटका में हो रही है, आप उसको कैसे समझती हैं, और आप क्यों हिजाब पहनती हैं? आपके लिए हिजाब क्या है?
मैं बहुत छोटी थी तब से हिजाब पहनती हूँ, तकरीबन 20 साल की उम्र से, और मुझे अच्छा लगता है इसलिए मैं पहनती हूँ। और मैं अपने आप को बहुत कंफर्टेबल महसूस करती हूँ हिजाब पहनने के बाद, बुर्का पहनने के बाद। मैं बाहर जाती हूँ तो मैं नकाब भी लगा लेती हूँ, तो उससे मेरे फेस की बहुत सारी प्रोटेक्शन हो जाती है, धूप नहीं लगती, उसके अलावा भी कोई दूसरी नजरें नहीं पड़ती इस तरीके के। लेकिन मेरे ऊपर कोई बाउंडेशन नहीं है कि मैं बुर्का पहनूं ही पहनूं, ये मैं इसलिए पहनती हूँ क्योंकि मुझे अच्छा लगता है। और जैसा कि कर्नाटक की वो हुई है अभी एक घटना जो घटित हुई है, बच्चियों को स्कूल में मना कर दिया, कॉलेज में हिजाब पहनकर नहीं आएंगी, तो ये मेरी नजर में बिल्कुल फिजूल है, क्योंकि हम भारतीय नागरिक हैं और हमें अपनी इच्छा से जिंदगी गुजारने का अधिकार है, और हम स्वतंत्र हैं, कुछ भी पहने कैसे भी रहें। और ये हमारे आर्टिकल 14 में हमें दिया गया है कि हमारा मौलिक अधिकार है, तो इसको अगर कोई छीनता है तो ये बिल्कुल गलत है। हमारे अधिकारों का हनन होता है अगर कोई इसको मना करता है।
ठीक, तो बहुत सारे लोगों के जो शायद इसके बारे में ज्यादा जानते भी नहीं है, पर बहुत सारे लोगों की सोच में है कि हिजाब पहनना एक पिछड़ा हुआ सोच की निशान है, कि ये आदमियों का आप पे एक तरह की असर है कि उनका नजर आप पे ना गिरे, तो आपको अपने आप को छुपानी है। तो इसलिए अगर मैं अभी ये न्यूज सिचुएशन से अगर मैं हटके पूछूं आपको, तो लोगों का समझ है कि ये एक पिछड़ा हुआ सोच की निशान है। तो आप इसके बारे में क्या कहेंगे?
मैं इसके बारे में ये कहूंगी कि देखिए, औरत कहीं भी किसी भी मजहब में रही हो, तो हमेशा पुरुषों ने उसको चाहे कि वो आगे ना आए, उसको छुपा कर रखा जाए, उसे दबा कर रखा जाए, चाहे वो बुर्का हो, चाहे घूंघट हो, किसी भी तरह का एक पर्दा हो। मर्द हमेशा चाहता है औरत जो है वो पर्दे में रहे। लेकिन मेरी तो ये है कि हिजाब जो मैं पहनती हूँ या जो महिलाएं पहनती है, बहुत सारी महिलाएं तो प्रेशर में पहनती है, उनको परिवार के लोग उनको पहनने के लिए प्रेशराइज करते हैं कि वो बाहर नहीं जाएं, बिना बुर्का पहने नहीं जाएं। जैसे कि हमारी बहुत सारी हिंदू बहनें घूंघट निकाल कर ही घर में रहती हैं, या बाहर जाती हैं तो घूंघट ही निकाल कर रहती हैं। तो ये कुछ सत्तात्मक सोच का भी एक नतीजा है। लेकिन मैं इसको हमारे परिप्रेक्ष्य में ये कहना चाहूंगी कि बहुत सारी बहनों ने इन प्रथाओं को तोड़ा है, वो आगे आई हैं, उन्होंने बुर्कों को भी छोड़ा है। अगर उन्हें लगा है कि या उनको किसी तरह से बाधा पहुंचा रहा है तो उन्होंने बुर्के छोड़ दिए। बहुत सारी बहनों ने घूंघट या पल्ला भी उतार दिया। उसमें ये उनकी अपनी एक डिग्निटी है, वो उनके अपने जीने का तरीका है, वो कैसे जिए ये उनकी इच्छा पर डिपेंड करता है। और प्रतिसत्तात्मक सोच तो हमेशा हर औरत के ऊपर आपको नजर आ जाएगी, क्योंकि ये जो आज मुसलमान औरतें बुर्का ओढ़ रही हैं, ये भी एक सोच का ही नतीजा है। क्योंकि इस्लाम में, कुरान में पर्दा करने का हुक्म औरत और मर्द दोनों की निगाहों का है। वो अपनी अपनी निगाहों की हिफाजत करें। वो अपने मतलब जैसे कि एक औरत मर्द की नजर से डरती है अपने आप को, वो नकाब भी लगा लेती है, इसी तरह मर्द पर भी लागू होता है कि वो किसी गैर औरत की तरफ नजर उठाकर नहीं देखे, लेकिन वो देखते हैं। तो औरतें अपनी सेफ्टी के लिए इस चीज से बचाव करना चाहती हैं, इसलिए डाल लेती हैं, लेकिन ऐसे जरूरी नहीं है। लेकिन ये चीज हुई है, और पीछे जमाने से, पुराने जमाने से ये एक तरीके से चलती आ रही एक प्रथा है जिसको लोग फॉलो करते हैं। बहुत सारे लोग इसमें खुद को कंफर्टेबल फील करते हैं, तो इसलिए वो ओढ़कर रखते हैं, वो सोचते हैं कोई बात नहीं। बहुत सारे लोग इसको कंफर्टेबल फील नहीं करते हैं, तो उन्होंने छोड़ दिया, क्योंकि कोई मेरे ऊपर अपनी इच्छाएं क्यों लागू करे, क्यों किसी की इच्छा के अनुसार मैं अपनी जिंदगी जीऊं। क्योंकि मुझे तो स्वतंत्रता का वैसा भी अधिकार है, क्योंकि मैं हिंदुस्तान में रहती हूँ, तो भी मुझे इस चीज का अधिकार है। और दूसरी चीज, अगर हम इस्लाम के परिप्रेक्ष्य में इसको देखना चाहेंगे, तो मैं आपको बता दूं, कुरान में 5 जगह पर्दे का जिक्र आया है, जिसमें 3 जगह से मर्दों के लिए जिक्र आया है, 1 जगह औरत के लिए जिक्र आया है, और 1 जगह अक्ल के लिए जिक्र आया है।
आपका कहना है कि ये आपका एक हक है और आपका एक चॉइस है, और आप पहनती हैं क्योंकि आपको इसमें कंफर्टेबल लगती हैं। तो मैं आपको बस ये पूछूंगी कि अगर आपको शायद कॉलेज जाने के लिए, अगर आप, क्योंकि वो कहेंगे कि यहाँ पे यूनिफॉर्म है, किसी को अलग नहीं दिखनी चाहिए, तो इसलिए आप हिजाब उतारिए, तो ये सिर्फ आपकी इच्छा है। अगर कोई आपको कहेगा कि ये माहौल ठीक रहने के लिए, एक यूनिफॉर्म माहौल करने के लिए कॉलेज के अंदर आप हिजाब उतार लीजिए, तो फिर आप उतारेंगे? आपको क्या लगेगा उसमें कि आपका हक छीना जा रहा है, कि अगर ये आपके लिए एकदम मजबूरन नहीं है तो आप ये छोड़ पाएंगी?
हाँ बिल्कुल, मैं आपको इस बात को बताऊंगी, क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ पर बहुत सारी बच्चे स्कूल जाती हैं जो रास्ते में बुर्खा ओढ़कर जाती हैं, और जब वो क्लास में जाती हैं तो अपने यूनिफॉर्म पहनी भी होती है तो वो बुर्खा को उतारकर बैग में रख देती हैं, लेकिन जब वो स्कूल से बाहर आती हैं तो वो उसको ओढ़कर आ जाती हैं, तो वो उनकी अपनी इच्छा है। लेकिन किसी को बाउंडेड करना कि वो आए ही नहीं, ऐसा तो नहीं हो सकता ना। किसी भी, अगर कोई लड़की वहां आ रही है और वो बुर्खा ओढ़ी भी है तो वो अपने, उसकी इच्छा है वो उसको उतार दे। क्लास में कुछ रूल्स होते हैं स्कूल्स के अंदर जिनको फॉलो करना कंपलसरी होता है, जैसे कि यूनिफॉर्म पहनना कंपलसरी है, सॉक्स पहनना कंपलसरी है, चुटियां मारना कंपलसरी है, बहुत सारी चीजें होती हैं। लेकिन कॉलेज में ये चीजें आगे बाउंड नहीं होती, वहाँ लड़कियां अपनी मर्जी की लाइफ स्टाइल जीती हैं। कॉलेज में जरूरी नहीं होता लड़कियां यूनिफॉर्म में ही रहें, वो स्कर्ट टॉप भी पहनती हैं। अगर हम देखें तो कॉलेज की लड़कियों को जीन्स टॉपर भी पहनती हैं, और अगर ऐसे ही कोई लड़की बुर्खा भी पहन ले तो उसमें क्या बुराई है? ये मुझे नहीं लगता कि इसके लिए मना करना चाहिए।
जी. So, Zakia, how would you look at this? And when we were chatting earlier, you were saying that there are many levels to this. In an environment like this, to bring up issues about the feminist aspect of whether to wear a hijab or a burqa or a niqab, that in an environment like this, it's become almost impossible to talk of those issues. But as I said, if we are all agreed, and I hope our audiences are agreed, that what is taking place in Karnataka, regardless of how the court rules on the idea of uniform, but just the way the confrontation is being held, I think there can be no two ways about it. But so if you look at some of the layers below that, what is your own thinking about the hijab? Would you make a distinction between the hijab and the niqab? And this question, a lot of people are raising, that if you wear a turban, if you wear a mauli, if you wear a Mangal Sutra, then how different is a hijab? Help us understand and clarify these issues.
Yeah. So in a way, I'm happy Jahanara has, given a very nuanced kind of opinion on this whole issue. And, like she has described how there are a range of situations and, contexts which are involved. So, yeah, see, I have seen, I got into social activism only after the communal riots of Gujarat in 2002. And when we formed that sort of a collective, you will be surprised, Shoma, because we needed to enroll volunteers in Aman Samudaya. And the volunteers necessarily had to be the survivors or the affected people. So it had to be a large number of them had to be Muslims. So when we enrolled the volunteers, almost all of them were in hijab or burqa. Now today, several hundreds of them are very strong activists, fighting against CA, fighting against all kinds of violation of their rights. Today, not a single one of them is in burqa or in hijab. No, we did not tell them to wear it. We did not tell them not to wear it. But they, these last nearly 20 years of journey of activism has been so empowering to them that they call the shots in their own lives. And, they receive a lot of cooperation from their husbands who were earlier making them wear the hijabs. Now the husband comes to drop her, pick her up, but she is without a hijab. So I'm saying that, it is that opportunity to sort of, liberate yourself and to come off your own as a woman and as a human being. That opportunity is not afforded in the life of everybody. So I firmly believe that hijab is a patriarchal imposition. And my heroine is Fatima Marnisi. So she has done pioneering work on the origins of veil in Islam. You know what Jahanara was saying? Fatima Marnisi has brought out all the evidence that what was essentially, that Arabic word sitar, which has a range of meanings like like a barrier or a wall or a covering, and it applied only to male because the social context of the time was all male, right? And how immediately after the passing away of the Prophet, and in the very first century after the Prophet was no more, it got distorted and it got misinterpreted and it got so sort of misused to make it a veil imposition on the Muslim woman, and it has persisted through the last several centuries. And hijab in India is, in my understanding and in my knowledge and in my experience, hijab in India is very recent. our nanis and dadis were never in hijab. They wore saris or they wore kurtas, depending on which part of the country you belong to. They all had a huge dupatta-like, sometimes chadar-like thing over and above their sari or their salwar kurta. They used to cover this, their heads and their shoulders with this, but their hair used to be flowing out. I mean, from even within that covering, they were not, this kind of a conservative, regressive thing that not a strand of your hair should be visible. If it becomes visible, then you're a bad woman. You're a bad Muslim. So,
Right.
so that kind of a rigid kind of a regime concerning the burqa and the hijab is very, very recent. And perhaps that is one of the reasons that girls whose mothers and grandmothers have never worn the burqa or the hijab, those girls are today in hijab. There definitely has to be a kind of a response to the Islamophobia and the getting singled out post 9/11 globally. And of course, in our country also. And 9/11 was followed by the Gujarat riots of 2002. And, all the talk had started. And then it was very soon sort of deteriorating into, this kind of a stereotyping of Muslims, singling out Muslims. So if you entered any public place, it can be a bank or it can be a showroom those days, and you announce your name, and everybody around will look up. To take one look at you.
Yeah,
अगर ऐसा नाम बोल रही है, ज़किया निज़ामी बोल रही है, तो all eyes will go up के भाई कौन है. So that kind of a singling out has been there in the air. So that may have added to the, like you want to assert your identity, especially because your identity is being put under so much pressure and so much questioning, unfair questioning, I would say.
Yeah.
But that said, a lot of this is besides the point in the present controversy.
Sheba, I just wanted you to take on what Zakia said, that the hijab for her is a sign of, as the ghungat would be, a sign of repression or patriarchy. But, she also said that many young girls now are choosing to wear it as a marker of their identity because of the political Islamophobia that's around the world and now growing in India. So then that becomes an act of choice. So how do you see it then? Should there be any discussion about it?
Whatever Zakia said, I just want to add on to the process and the internal, churning that the Muslim societies all over the world going on. Particularly in India, we have seen that from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, and particularly in Kerala, we have seen that people who never wore burqa or niqab, they are all of a sudden in last 15 to 20 years, we are seeing them converting into a hijabi or burqa clad or covering their faces even. It's happening in Kashmir also, it's happening in Kerala also, and in parts of, and large parts of Karnataka. So all these areas, there is some kind of, phenomena that is going on latently, which we haven't been able to pan properly, and we don't know what is going on over there. There are certain religious organizations which are whole timer. I mean, like people like us are appearing on television and talking about these issues when there is some kind of crisis brewing up the surface. But what is going on underneath is a main issue. And I understand that it is not just Islamophobia, it is the other way out as well. Using that Islamophobia, there are people who are telling Muslims to behave in certain way, to get regimented in certain way, and consolidate as a one identity group. And that is definitely happening in the south of India. All the governments have either ignored it or used it to, to malign the community instead of reforming the community. So there are certain questions that we are worried about, and we have to understand that in India we are a perpetually election running nation, and if we continue to say that it is happening only due to elections and then it will die out, I don't think it is going to die out like that. As far as Muslim society in India is concerned, yes, there is a kind of minorityism that has crept into the society. That due to this minorityism that has crept into the society, we haven't been able to take regular, normal, healthy decision as a rational society. We haven't been, even our leadership, if you see, we haven't been asking for education and skill development and all those things. What we were asking was Hajj subsidies and all those things. since last, like after the Babri Masjid event happened, we started contemplating in a very different way. And there are now Muslim within, there is a lot of social churning going on when Muslims have decided that we have to surpass these religious leaders and decide their own, course. Since then, Muslim females have also, articulated their own demands. After Shah Bano, there was a long lull of decades, and then all of a sudden, in 2000, we see many voices, including myself, and including organizations like Bama and Zakia and Nurjahan. All these people started working. We all started working. So there is something that is happening now in Muslim society. Background that's coming. So the whole society, Muslim society, is going through a major, humongous churning right now, and there are all sorts of voices.
Yeah, so Sheeba, if you can just ladder your response that, as a Muslim feminist, both you and Zakia identify as Muslim feminists, that you said on the position of the hijab, that, one aspect of worry is that you feel a kind of Wahhabi influences coming in, whether from the Middle East or Indonesia or Malaysia, and you're feeling that there is a kind of, the same way as we are facing majoritarian politics in India, that you feel that there is a kind of, Islamic forces are also misusing the situation to create a kind of artificial religiosity in the country, which is not homegrown, is not organic. So you've articulated that. But vis-a-vis the hijab, there might be both liberals as well as practicing Muslim women like Jahanara or other young girls who would say that why should our progressiveness or our modernity only depend upon what we wear? So, is a woman wearing a sari less modern than a woman wearing jeans? So, is the clothes a important signifier in your world, in your understanding?
If you talk about Afghanistan and move on towards the Central Asia and Middle East, this attire is a cultural thing. It was, it was shaped by the geography and the climate, and then it was adopted by the ideologies also. So we have to understand that geography-led attire became Islamic ideal type for the whole of the rest of the world. That is the problem. And when we talk about this particular headscarf that is being called hijab right now, see, hijab is a concept. It means to create barrier between the genders. Now hijab crystallizing into a scarf means that it is not something Islamic, but it is a derivative. It is a crystallization. And it came from Southeast Asia, from Malaysia and Indonesia. It is this headscarf thing was there when Islam is spread. People who were wearing skirts and jeans and t-shirts, they just wanted to add one small piece of cloth, and then they are done with the religious compulsion of covering their head. So, and because of the kind of ease it offers, it became popular all over the world. Just a piece of cloth. As far as the other attires are concerned, see, in Tuareg tribe of Arab Muslims, it is the male who have to cover their faces, and women are not allowed and supposed to cover their faces. So there are variety of tribes and tribal practices, but considering any one of them as an Islamic ideal type and adopting it, that is an Arabic imperialism that we have to be very conscious about. Anything that is being done in those parts, particularly in Saudi Arabia, is not Islamic ideal type and is not Islam, and we have to, culturalize it and, indigenize it as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So just, I'm going to now come to Pooja, but
if I can just, add to what Sheeba was saying. So it's not just the hijab. There are several other things. Like we all grew up saying Khuda Hafiz. But in the last few years, it has suddenly become Allah Hafiz. And if you say Khuda Hafiz, people frown back on you, including your own relatives and family members. And then, all those men in Hyderabad and some of the southern states in particular, dressing up in all those long abaya kind, flowing those white garments. Then usage of very Arabic words, within our Urduized, even as we spoke Gujarati, we spoke Urduized Gujarati, Urduized Marathi. Instead of Ramzan, we started saying Ramadan. And Saudi Arabia has a role there, and all the Saudi Arabian influence is here. backed by the financial resources which come, to so many Islamic organizations which have begun to mushroom all over the country. And you see these, very artificially imposed changes coming in the, lives of the community. So it's just blind following of what they understand as Islam and imposing those, I would say irrational teachings on the ordinary Muslims. So I often feel, that they lack in commitment. They also lack in competence to take on a, rather organized force like Hindutva.
Shoma, I want to add one small aspect to it, and then you may go to Pooja ji. Shoma, see, one has to understand that there is a conjuncture here, that the post-colonial societies, particularly Muslim societies, and who became democratic, all of a sudden they found that the patriarchy found that it has no role left in the society per se. Particularly if you take the example of India, in a post-colonial modern India, Muslim patriarchy is left with just one choice of ruling within the family. They have no say in economics, they have no say in politics, they have no say in foreign affairs or home affairs or anywhere. Whatever was there, they thought that they have been ruling. They were devoid of all the authority and all the say. So the only arena that was left to them was their homes, and that is why they became, the kind of authoritarianism you see in the Muslim household right now. And after the partition, you will see that it is just the reflection of that, because they have no other arena left for them to take decisions, and they have started ruling their lives who are subordinate to them within the four walls of the home. So the problem of equality, freedom, justice within the family has become the larger than other issues that were involved. So, and that is why we are talking about all these four values of enlightenment bringing in within the family with the help of state at the times, or with the help of some kind of social churning and social awareness.
No, I think it's very courageous of both of you to raise the, because I often feel as liberals that because the environment is so, majoritarian driven, that in some ways one is not even getting the confidence to start conversations about, say, what may be problematic within the Muslim community, what actually would be good for the Muslim community from within, for their own selves, rather than being like a force of, like a secular force against majoritarian politics. So it's actually forcing all of us into very frozen positions. And so it's very courageous of both of you to say, what may be problematic within, even as you fight what is unfair or undemocratic about the way the Hindutva forces are expressing themselves. But Pooja, you're the only one who's been on the ground. We were not able to call a lot of the girls from Karnataka because for this show, they don't speak English or Hindi. But help us understand their psyche. When you had first said some of them are making a political statement. Who are those that are making a political statement? What is that statement they're making? And secondly, who are the girls like Jahanara who may be wearing the hijab either because their families want it or because they want it? What is their psyche?
I think there are different sets of women who are asserting their right to wear hijab. Some of them are doing so because they think that it's a matter of liberty, it's a matter of equality. Some of these women who are doing so for these reasons come from perhaps slightly more progressive families where they are allowed to choose whether or not they want to wear hijab when they go to classes. So, that comes from a place of assertion.
Just to cut in there so that our audience can know, and this is an information I got from your story actually, that some of the girls who are wearing hijab in the colleges and asserting their right to do that, some of the other Hindutva groups found pictures and images of them on social media where they were not wearing hijab. And so it's being presented as if they're fine, it's not part of their religion, it's not necessary, then why are they coming to college like that? Again, there's a big issue of privacy here that, for people to break into social media and gather that, there's a whole privacy issue. I'm not going into that, but I'm asking then what is the psyche? Like if they're fine, they're comfortable not wearing hijab, then why are they doing it? What political statement are they making?
Like I said, I think some of the girls are showing solidarity. So they're wearing hijab in class to show solidarity with their, sisters elsewhere. And these are many of these are women who have the option of choosing, right? But there are also several other young women I spoke to who do not have that option. They cannot negotiate that with their families, and they say that, you know, it has been a long road for us to allow our families to attend colleges. Some of them are, you know, co-education colleges where there are male students. So for them, this is non-negotiable. If they are forced to remove hijab, then they worry that their families will not allow them to continue with their education. So I think right now, you know, we can have conversation about whether or not hijab is a form of oppression, is a perpetuation of patriarchy, is it against feminism? All these are very, very important conversations. But I think right now, those who are opposing to hijab are not coming from a point of feminism. Let's be very, very clear on that, because they're not doing so to liberate those women from hijab. It is none of those things. It is just clean, and many of them don't even bother to guise it, right? It's just Islamophobia, because there are several other forms of patriarchy. Every religion has these symbols, as does Islam, as does Hinduism, Christianity. Every religion does. So, you know, singling out hijab as the only form of patriarchy and choosing that to fight feminist battles, I think will kind of take us back. For me, after my conversations with these young women, I think allowing or ensuring that these women have a right to come to colleges on their own terms, are allowed to at least get access to education, is a bigger issue as far as feminism is concerned than you know, making them come out of hijab. So this is a sense I got talking to women. You cannot paint them all with the same brush. You know, it's also important to mention here, like some of the protesters who are wearing those saffron shawls belong to organizations like the ABVP or Hindu Jagran Vedike. Some of the girls who are wearing hijab now were not doing so before. And some of them are also associated or are active members of organizations like the CFI, the Campus Front of India, or the SIO. So yes, both sides have been politicized. There's no looking away from that. But I think many colleges had come to a point where they said, all right, we will allow you to cover your heads. So what you could do is, many of these colleges have salwar kameez and dupatta as their uniform. So they allow the dupatta to be used as a headscarf, right? So that is some form of meeting in between. Now, even that is not happening, which means that many of these girls might have to discontinue their education. That, for me, is the biggest crisis that we're faced with, that we could be looking at marginalizing many of these girls. And here I say, I mean, the fault, of course, largely lies with the administration and the, you know, the students who are protesting against hijab. But a part of the blame also lie with the girls who are now putting their foot down without realizing the damage that they're doing, right? It's important to engage and have discussions. You cannot, while the fact that they have a right to wear hijab is not negotiable. So if it's a choice for you to wear a hijab, if at all that does not happen today, you can continue with your education. You have the option of fighting your battles through other avenues. But what about girls who don't have that option? So is it fair to them that because you wanted to make a larger point that they suffer today? For me, it is, it's a story that we cannot look at in just black and white. Which is why, you know, a lot of us, we have been traveling, we've been also talking to women, we've been trying to understand what their situation is. But having said that, I just want to say that, you know, as someone who's covered politics in Karnataka, I have not seen a state government that has been this complicit. You know, education minister, home minister, everybody speaking the language of these Hindu organizations is very disturbing. We are reaching a stage where there's no return. I've seen Karnataka change, and many people are surprised why it's happening in a state like Karnataka, which some believe to be progressive. But over the last 8 to 10 years, particularly, it's happening more rapidly. And today, the kind of hate that I'm seeing in colleges in rural parts of Karnataka, not just urban centers, I don't see how they can go back to sitting next to each other in colleges and become friends, you know, share a cup of coffee and go back to the reason why they're all there, to get educated.
Yeah, God, I mean, to try and have a deeper conversation in a time when something is so deeply polarized is itself difficult. It makes you, almost look like you're enabling something or not enabling something. I can only say that I know all of us here are not trying to enable a situation where girls can be heckled and, in any form. So I think one has to just operate from that position. जहानारा, मैं आपसे पूछने चाह रही थी कि अभी जो बात हो रही थी कि जब आपने कहा कि आप हिजाब, एक चीज जो आपने कहा पहले वो एकदम हम सब सहमत है उसमें कि अगर आपकी इच्छा है तो आपको पहननी चाहिए, और जैसे आपने कहा लोगों टर्बन पहनते हैं या सलवार कमीज पहनते हैं या साड़ी पहनते हैं, कुछ मुस्लिम वुमेन साड़ी पहनते हैं, कुछ हिंदू वुमेन सलवार कमीज पहनते हैं, तो ये तो है हमारे देश में कि वो है। पर अगर आज आपकी इच्छा हुई कि आप हिजाब ना पहने, आप बुर्का ना पहने, और आप बहुत सारे मुस्लिम महिलाओं के साथ आप काम करते हैं, औरतों के साथ काम करती हैं, आप सच्ची स्वतंत्र हैं। अगर आज आपके मन करें कि आप नहीं पहनने चाहते हो, तो जो मर्द आपके परिवार में है, आपकी कौम, ये मानेंगे, आपको ये चॉइस दे पाएंगे उन्होंने कि आप हिजाब उतारने चाहती हैं?
हाँ, अगर मेरी इच्छा है कि मैं नहीं पहनूं तो मुझे कोई नहीं रोक सकता। मुझे मेरे परिवार में कोई ऐसा इशू नहीं है कि वो मुझे प्रेशराइज करें कि मैं ओढ़ूं ही ओढ़ूं, बुर्का ओढ़ूं। बुर्का मैं अपनी इच्छा से ही ओढ़ती हूँ, और मेरे परिवार में कोई भी मर्द नहीं है, मैं आपको ये बताना चाहूंगी, क्योंकि मेरी एक मदर थी, वो एक्सपायर्ड हो चुकी हैं, और मेरे कोई भाई है नहीं
जी। तो पर बाकी औरत जिसके साथ आप काम करती हैं आंदोलन के तौर से, तो आपको लगता है कि वो स्वतंत्र है कि कुछ दबाव है उन पे? और दूसरी बात की जो बहुत इस्लाम में ये अगर मर्दों का नजर संभालना है, अगर नकाब कर या हिजाब अगर कि बुरी नजर ना जाए, तो ये आदमियों का रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होनी चाहिए। औरतों पे क्यों रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है कि वही हिजाब पहने, वो बुर्का पहने? ये चीज बहुत लोग पूछने चाहते हैं।
मैं बताना चाहूंगी कि मेरे साथ बहुत सारी बहनें काम करती हैं, जो काम करती हैं वो अक्सर मीटिंग्स में या कई प्रोग्राम होते हैं वहां पर बुर्का उतार देती हैं, और वो फ्री ऑफ रहती हैं, उनके ऊपर किसी का कोई प्रेशर नहीं होता।
नहीं, पर जहाँ मर्द भी है, जो महिला,
जहाँ मर्द भी होते हैं मीटिंग्स में, बहुत सारे ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस की जब मीटिंग्स होती है तो वो मर्द भी होते हैं, तो मेरे ही साथी कई लोग बुर्का उतार देते हैं, और उनको इस बात का कोई वो नहीं होता कि वो क्यों बुर्का उतार रहे हैं या वो क्यों बुर्का ओढ़ रहे हैं, ये कोई मैटर नहीं रखता। दूसरी चीज आपने पूछा,
अगर वो मुस्लिम मर्द होंगे और मुस्लिम जलसा होगा तो भी वो बुर्का उतारेंगी? सारे मर्द वहां अगर मुसलमान होंगे तो भी वो बुर्का उतार देंगी?
ये थोड़ा टिपिकल है, क्योंकि ये कहीं ना कहीं कितने भी हम अपने आप को प्रूव कर दें कि हम लोग कंफर्टेबल हैं, हम अपनी इच्छा से ओढ़ते हैं, लेकिन कहीं ना कहीं पीछे, इस सब के पीछे प्रतिसत्तात्मक सोच जरूर है, जिसने हमें पहले से, बचपन से हमारे दिमागों में इस चीज को डाला हुआ है कि हमें नजरों से बचना है, हमें बुर्का को ओढ़ना है, हमें खुद को छुपा कर रखना है, क्योंकि ये इस्लाम में नहीं है। उसके बावजूद भी हमारी जो पैदाइश होती है और जब तक हम बड़े होते हैं तब तक हमें इस तरीके का हमारा माइंड डेवलप कर दिया जाता है कि हम उसके अंदर खुद को कंफर्टेबल महसूस करने लगे, और हमें लगे कि नहीं हम उसको पहन रहे हैं। और एकदम से जो औरतें हैं जिनकी अगर हम बात करें, तो अगर वैसे वो बहुत फ्री होती हैं, और जब उनको ऐसा लगता है कि गैर मर्द आ गए या बहुत सारी भीड़ मुस्लिम मर्दों की आ गई, तो वो सोचती है कि बुर्का ओढ़ लेना चाहिए।
That is the crux of the matter.
ये बिल्कुल
जी। पर मैं अब वापस जाकिया जी और शीबा से कुछ पूछने चाहूंगी, पर उसके पहले ये आपने फिर से मुझे बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है कि आप पूरा एकदम ऑनेस्टी से बात कर रही हैं कि जो सच है, जो नहीं है, और ये जो एक बाधा है वो भी आप बहुत खुल के बोल रही हैं। तो आपके हिसाब में ये जो कर्नाटका में हो रहा है, आप क्या सोचेंगी अगर अब कोर्ट की रूलिंग आए कि स्कूलों में यूनिफॉर्म होनी चाहिए, और ये आप जैसे कह रही थी कि ये इस्लाम की कोई चिन्ह नहीं है कि हम हिजाब पहने तभी हम मुस्लिम हो सकते हैं। जाकिया जी और शीबा भी मुस्लिम हैं, तो आपको क्या लगेगा? मतलब आप क्या चाहती हैं कर्नाटका में जो हो रहा है? आप क्या नतीजा चाहेंगे वहां से?
देखिए, मैं कर्नाटका का जो मामला चल रहा है उसके अंदर यही नतीजा चाहूंगी कि जो जैसा रह रहा है या वो जो जैसा पहन रहा है उसको उसकी आजादी मिलनी चाहिए। ये उसकी अपनी एक संवैधानिक अधिकार है उसका, कि वो उसको किसी चीज के लिए पाबंद ना किया जाए, क्योंकि ये स्कूल यूनिफॉर्म तक बात सीमित नहीं है, ये कॉलेज की बात है। और कॉलेज में सबकी, मैंने कहा, अपनी एक स्टाइल होती है रहने की, और सब लोग अपने अपने स्टाइल से ही वहां रहते हैं। इतनी जरूरी नहीं होती कि कॉलेज में, और कॉलेजेस में ज्यादातर यूनिफॉर्म कोड भी नहीं होता। तो हम ये चाहेंगे कि जो भी फैसला है वो एक स्वतंत्रतानिक, हमारे संवैधानिक अधिकारों को नजर में रखते हुए आए, और किसी भी तरह के कोई बाउंडेशन उस पर ना हो कि भाई आपको नहीं, ऐसा नहीं, ऐसा ही करना है। वो श्री राम के नारे लगा रहे हैं तो आपको अल्लाह अकबर ही कहना है। ये सब हमारे धर्मनिरपेक्षता को घायल करता है, हमारी जो गंगा जमनी तहजीब है उसको तोड़ता है। ये हमारे लिए एक नया विवाद खड़ा करता है, और ये सब चीजें जो है वो एक राजनीति का हिस्सा है। मैं आपको बता दूं, चुनाव करीब है, और ये किसी न किसी तरह से कुछ मतलब ऐसे लोग हैं जो कि माहौल को खराब करना चाहते हैं, जो कुछ छोटे छोटे इश्यूज पर चीजों को बढ़ा रहे हैं, ताकि किसी तरह लोग दूसरी चीजों में लग जाएं, और जो मेन पॉइंट है लोगों के दिमाग में जो चल रहा है, एक तरीके का माहौल क्रिएट हो जाए, हिंदू मुस्लिम में लग जाए, यूनिफॉर्म को लेके लग जाए। हम सवाल ना करें, हमें रोजगार चाहिए, हम सवाल ना करें हमारी एजुकेशन कैसी हो, हम सवाल ना करें कि मतलब जो इस तरह की भेदभावपूर्ण नीति हो रही है वो नहीं होनी चाहिए। हम किसी भी इशू के ऊपर बात ना करें और हम इसमें लग जाए कि मुसलमान बुर्का ओढ़े, हिंदू साड़ी पहने। मतलब हमें मुद्दे से भटकाए जाने की एक कोशिश है, जो कि इस वक्त हम कर्नाटका में देख रहे हैं।
जी, एक आधुनिक सोच के लिए कभी रिफॉर्म की जरूरत होती है, तो एकदम स्वतंत्र होने के लिए आदमी को भी और औरत को भी कभी एक थोड़ा पुश करना पड़ता है कि और सही से सोचे, जिसमें सबका अपना सच्ची चॉइस है। जो पहले आप कह रही थी कि हिजाब अगर फैशन से कर रहे हैं, बहुत सारी महिलाओं को अच्छा लगता है, या बुर्का भी बहुत सारी जगह में बहुत सुंदर सा एक निशान है, पहचान है, पर वो मजे से कर रहे हैं, तो वो अलग बात है। पर जैसे हिंदू कॉम में विडो मैरिज अलाउड नहीं था, चाइल्ड मैरिज होती थी, सती होती थी, वो सब चीज को हटाने के लिए लेजिस्लेशन भी आया और लोगों को धक्का देके उस सबको बदलना पड़ा, मैरिजेबल एज को बदलना पड़ा। तो इस तौर से मुस्लिम कौम में बदलाव लाने के लिए आपको पहला बदलाव आनी चाहिए, और किस किस चीज की बदलाव आनी चाहिए, और आदमियों का सोच बदलने के लिए
बिल्कुल। भारतीय मुस्लिम महिला आंदोलन से जुड़े हुए हैं हम लोग, और भारतीय मुस्लिम महिला आंदोलन मुस्लिम महिलाओं के इश्यूज पर बहुत अच्छे से काम कर रहा है, और हर उस मुद्दे को जो मुसलमान औरतों के ऊपर जबरदस्ती थोपे गए हैं या गलत तरीके से प्रैक्टिस में आ रहे हैं, हम उसके खिलाफ आवाज भी उठाते हैं। और देखिए, अभी मैं आपको दो ऐसी चीजें याद दिलाना चाहूंगी यहाँ पर, जो भारतीय मुस्लिम महिला आंदोलन ने एक मुस्लिम महिलाओं के अधिकारों को रिलेटेड की है, जिसमें पहली हाजी अली की लड़ाई है, जिसमें समानता के अधिकार को लेकर पूरा क्या कहते हैं पिटीशन दायर की गई हाई कोर्ट में, और फिर पूरी एक लड़ाई लड़ी गई। मुस्लिम महिलाओं ने इस कदम को उठाया कि हमें क्यों दरगाह में नहीं जाने दिया जाए, जब मुस्लिम मर्द आते हैं तो मुस्लिम औरतें भी वहां जाएंगी, क्योंकि हमें बराबरी का हक अल्लाह ने दिया है। दूसरी मैं आपको बताना चाहूंगी, अभी थोड़े ही साल पहले हमारे हिंदुस्तान में तलाक को बैन किया गया है, और ट्रिपल तलाक को बैन किया गया है, और उसका कानून भी बना है। उसके लिए भी भारतीय मुस्लिम महिला आंदोलन ने बहुत मेहनत की है, सुप्रीम कोर्ट तक गए हैं, एक लड़ाई लड़ी है लॉ रिफॉर्म के लिए। कि देखिए, हम मानते हैं कि भारतीय संविधान में शरीयत एप्लीकेशन एक्ट हम पर लागू हो रहा है, भारतीय संविधान में उसको इंक्लूड किया हुआ है कि हम पर शरीयत लागू होगी, और इसे हम मानते हैं। लेकिन हमारी शरीयत जो है, जो मुसलमानों के लिए जो कानून बनाए गए हैं, लोग उसको प्रैक्टिस में फॉलो नहीं करते हैं। तो हम डिमांड करते हैं उसके लिए हम डिमांड कर रहे हैं कि एक मुस्लिम महिला को जितने हक कुरान ने दिए हैं कोई दे ही नहीं सकता। उसके अंदर मैं आपको बताना चाहूंगी, मुसलमान औरत को बहुत सारे हक अल्लाह ने दिए हैं, तो वो हक उसे नहीं मिलते। उस हक को लेने के लिए हम एक पूरी लड़ाई लड़ रहे हैं। हम भारतीय मुस्लिम महिला आंदोलन के तहत हर आवाज को उठा रहे हैं, औरतों तक जाते हैं, उनसे बात करते हैं, उनके इश्यूज को बाहर लाने की कोशिश करते हैं, और एक एक इशू के ऊपर, अभी जिस तरह से ट्रिपल तलाक पर बात हुई, एक बैठक में 3 तलाक को बैन कर दिया गया, अब कानून भी बन गया है, तो उसको भी फॉलो करवाने की कोशिश हमारी रहती है। दूसरी, हमने पोलेगेमी और हलाला पर भी पिटीशन दायर की हुई है भारतीय मुस्लिम महिला आंदोलन ने सुप्रीम कोर्ट में। क्योंकि देखिए पोलेगेमी को जैसे कि अगर हम बात करें तो एक से ज्यादा शादियों को मुसलमान को लेकर वो किया हुआ है कि भाई मुसलमान है तो एक से ज्यादा शादी कर सकता है, लेकिन कुरान में जहाँ एक से ज्यादा शादियां करने की इजाजत दी गई है वहीं कुरान के अंदर ये भी कहा गया है कि अगर तुम इंसाफ नहीं कर सकते तो एक ही के साथ रहो। तो ये चीजें हैं जहाँ बदलाव की बहुत जरूरत है, और बहुत सारे मुस्लिम महिलाओं के ऐसे इश्यूज हैं जिनके अंदर बात क्या है और प्रैक्टिस क्या है, मतलब वो चीजें मुद्दे से हटकर हैं। तो हम उसके लिए लॉ रिफॉर्म के लिए काम कर रहे हैं और इंशाल्लाह हम आगे तक करते रहेंगे।
Zakia and Sheeba, let me just come back to you. We'll have to wrap this.
In India, it is a very counterproductive, phenomena. Whenever we are trying to bring in some changes through state, particularly now, then it becomes a rallying point for the counterproductive forces. We have seen that during the Triple Talaq campaign also, when lakhs and lakhs of Muslim women signed these papers and said that they don't want any change in the law, although they understood that there is a patriarchal male politics that is going on, but they would say that they don't want to go for it. So let us, there are certain things which are bad in law but good in practice. We have to promote that. We have to let it happen in an organic manner where people are discovering, realizing, and adopting. So that is my understanding of the things in a multicultural democracy like India that is going through huge transition, huge changes, and where we have people supporting, Gobar, Gaumutra, and all those things. The kind of non-scientific temperament that is being, promoted on the one hand, and the same people want Muslim women to become the world-class citizens, become most rational, become most scientific, become most educated, and free of the patriarchy. So this is the funniest part, that those who are pressurizing Muslim women right now to become the most rational and scientific and material, modern and all those things, they are themselves promoting something else for their own women and their own societies. Let me inform you, in spite of these charged, diatribe that is going on television and otherwise, Muslims are thinking about the takeaways of this fiasco, that when it comes to close and we decide that what we got out of it, people are thinking that we don't want, our ideals are not the dari topi and hijabis and all those things. Regularly I am receiving messages on my phone that please promote modernity, please, and these are all Muslims only and males only. They are saying that we need people like Shah Rukh Khan, people like Abul Kalam and all these things. So people are conscious. They know it is just a kind of a gubar hai jo guzar jayega, and then after good sense will prevail, and we have to continue with the trajectory of moving towards modernity, rationality, scientific temperament, and progress.
Right. Just one last question that, I'm going to come to Zakia for last words also, that if you scratch at people's skin, there's a prejudice that the Quran itself, is discriminatory towards women, that Islam as a religion is, forces women into a second-class citizenship sort of position. So, as I said, both of you identify as Muslim feminists. Forgive me if it sounds disrespectful. I just want to have the space to articulate what may arise out of ignorance in people also. But there's this commonly held view. What would you say to that?
Can I come in first before Zakia answers? So, as far as this particular thing about Islam goes, this is something very, very new, very, very modern, and it is the modernity within Islam, the Islamic feminism that is happening, and it is a very rigorous scholarship-based exercise of Muslims, men and women both, who are understanding, who are reading, understanding, interpreting, and formulating on the basis of that scholarship, that how Islam is the most pro-woman religion, how it has given all the rights to Muslim women. And people like me I had no pressure from the family to become a Muslim, practicing Muslim. We were Muslim in a comfortable sense that, okay, we are Muslims, but that's it. But now, after studying Islam, And after studying the articulations of Islamic feminism, I became, a new Muslim who would be so proud of the faith and so proud of the jurisprudence within. So I think Zakia would add to it. But for me, Islam is the first feminist religion that gave me the choice to marry the person I want to marry, that gave me the choice to study, to work, and to own property. That was the one basic right that was missing everywhere. And then also to call my bad marriage null and void and remarry and do the, if it goes bad, I can continue, I can repeat, and it was at par with men. So all these things, these were the legal injunctions given by Islam that were adopted by the West, by other societies, including India. If you see the Special Marriage Act document, it is exactly the Nikahnama, and it is the replication of that. So many, the right to divorce for any woman is such a big emancipatory right. So right to property, right to divorce, right to marry, etc., etc., etc. Everything is there. What more you are asking for? It is just that we have to reclaim our religion. So this is something very positive about it, and I am very hopeful.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm going to just come to Zakia, but you have to run off, Sheeba. Zakia, just to come to Sheeba, if you need to leave for your next meeting, then that's fine. Zakia,
thank you so much.
Zakia, I just want to come to you for some last thoughts. There's this question now in the courts, which is about essential practices, of Islam. Do you think that's a slippery road to go down?
Yeah, so, it's very, very important because we are a multi-faith society and we cannot be so inward looking. So what comprises essential practices has to be frozen once and for all. Today we are adding hijab, tomorrow we're going to add something else. That cannot happen, and that cannot happen on any side. So so that is about it. But I would also say, quite apart from the crisis of Hindutva, and quite apart from the crisis about this imagination of a Hindu Rashtra, which is contrary to the imagination of a secular democratic India that we find in the constitution. It's a huge, huge problem. It has come home today. But this situation did not develop overnight. It has been a kind of a works in progress on the side of the followers of Hindutva politics. But on the side of the Muslim leadership also, there has been a lot of gaps. And we have walked straight into the trap of, this kind of divisive politics.
So in what way do you think that that's missing, say from the Muslim perspective?
So when there is an onslaught of Hindutva, then we remember secularism. But within our own community, we sort of support and further all the regressive practices. Forget secularism, we do not allow even simple diversity of views, because Muslims are not a monolith. There are, culturally speaking, even theologically speaking, but in a very sad way, we are becoming quite monolithic in our conservatism. I'm not saying this as a strategy. I'm saying this as a, we are so fortunate that we are born into a secular democratic republic. Look at our, fellow religionists in the neighborhood. And aren't we, so fortunate and so glad that we are Indians and, we are equal citizens? So do we want to sort of waste it all away on, this kind of inward looking and very, very sort of narrow kind of definitions and understandings, which is becoming very fashionable, like we discussed, like in the last couple of decades. So so many liberals now today are, wishing away the entire movement against triple talaq, which was led by the Muslim women. I'm sure now they would be jumping on the right to hijab and things like that, and how Muslim women are valiantly fighting. But, this is like this kind of glossing over the shortcomings of the Muslim community. You criticize the Congress party for that, but then a lot of the liberals are doing the same. And today also, like the Islamic organizations are, in response to what has happened in Karnataka, some Islamic organizations are running a right to hijab campaign. And a lot of secular and feminist people are blindly supporting it. So we have to also have that kind of a balance. Just because the community is under onslaught, that doesn't mean that you give a blank check to the community. No doubt there is a lot of wrong which is happening, which is being happening under the watch of the NDA government. Let's oppose that. Let's demand accountability, but let's not, harm ourselves further. Is what I would say.
Just to end on, yes, there is a right to hijab, campaign that is being run. So, one is that the mentality that the hijab suggests, which, even as Jahanara said, that if you're there in a Muslim male group, you'll probably want to wear the hijab because Muslim men have not yet got accustomed I'm obviously using a big generalizing brushstroke, but there's that sense that there's a kind of gender barrier that must be maintained. And so it represents a certain way of thinking, which is not in keeping with modernity, But at another level, in every culture, we don't have to make ourselves into a supermarket of modernity, that you do wear cultural signifiers, whether it's a bindi, whether it's a turban, whether it's a beard, otherwise we would be effacing all cultural signifiers as well.
Exactly.
Again, in that context, the right to hijab seems a right demand, as one should have the right to wear a Mangal Sutra. Many feminists think of the Mangal Sutra as a symbol of patriarchy. I'd like you to help us think that through, because obviously you don't want a society where there's child marriage or widows aren't allowed to remarry. Any impingement on your individual right should be legislated away, in fact. But what about cultural signifiers that you may want?
Yeah, so we have had all this discussion about hijab not being part of our culture. It has been imported only in the last few years. And it's not as though it only ends at hijab, Shoma. It also, then it also says that because you are women, you don't have to tell us what the religious teachings are. We'll tell you always, and you will have to only obey. So it doesn't stop at hijab. Then it also says that at what time of the day can you go out, at what time you cannot go out. What are the kind of professions you can enter into? It goes on and on and on. Although per se, like I said, all our volunteers started in hijab, but we didn't at all sort of feel it necessary to stop them or anything like So it's like a mindset. We have constructed this norm that a good woman will be in hijab, and we have very proactively constructed this norm. Even I get asked, at the end of, they'll admire my, what we are doing, they'll admire what I'm saying. But at the end, there will always be somebody in the audience who will get up and say, ma'am, if you don't mind, why are you not in an Islamic dress? So, why are we putting so much premium on this outward clothing, which is not ours in any case? And it's not as though I'm obscenely dressed ever. I'm fashionable in my own way, but I'm also, because I'm into social work, I know what I will wear and what I will not wear. So I don't need some man to tell me why I'm not in an Islamic dress. So it is becoming an instrument of, putting women in their place, very frankly. As such, I have no objection. Who can have any objection to hijab or no hijab? So, but it doesn't end there, Shoma.
No, I told, and I'm really glad you are articulating the crisis within. Earlier when we were chatting, you was also saying that increasingly young girls are being made to wear hijab at age 2 and 3, and if it is that itself, well, not 2 or 3, but like at a very, very young age. And
KG and nursery age.
So that's signifying that one is this male patriarchy, but an absence of choice, because at age 3 and 4, you don't really know what you want to do later. But like you were saying earlier, that it also in a way is objectifying and sexualizing very, very young children. Why should you be protected from a male gaze?
Yes, we are sexualizing even, little girls of 2 and 3 and 4 kg and nursery going girls. We are viewing them as girls, as sexual objects. That's why we put them into that head to toe burqa. No? Otherwise, we would be, dressing them up in a way that they can run around, they can play, they can ride their little cycles, they can, do whatever. So this factor is increasing, Shoma. We did not see so many hijab-clad people around us in our childhood, nor did I see them in my college days. But I've started seeing them only in the last 20 years. So much so that you go to some, particular places like in Hyderabad or even in Kerala, for that matter. I'll be the only woman in the entire, room or entire neighborhood who is not in a hijab. So how did that happen? Why is that happening? And what impact it is having on us And it's sort of also manufacturing this schizophrenic kind of personalities amongst us, where we all want to conform, so we all carry a sort of a burqa or an hijab in our bags, and before entering that particular home or that particular place, we put it on, and then when we're on our own, we remove it. So I mean, choice is also it's a very, very complex kind of a situation, actually. Yeah.
So Zakia, you're working very much within the framework of Quran, and that is the USP of your organization. So help our audience understand that why should there be a separation? Earlier, when I was asking Jahanara and SHEEBA also, and you were saying that niqab can take the place of a glass shield, or it can be a zinana, but why should there be a separation between the genders? Is that written into the Quran, or is it just become the accepted practice?
See the way of reading and understanding the Quran. Of course, it's up to any Muslim and every Muslim to read and understand, but it has to be a very evolving way, because the Quran can broadly be seen in two parts. One is the normative, and one is the contextual. The normative is, all these values of kindness, compassion, justice, fairness, wisdom. These are the normative values of the Quran. And beyond those, rest is all contextual, Shoma, And so the context, so many centuries have passed between then and now. So, we can read and reread and interpret and evolve. That is the spirit in which the Quran should be read, which we have fundamentally in South Asia failed to do. We just, read it without understanding. We just recite it without understanding. And even the commentaries which are available are generally, by menfolk. And also, they are sort of based on a certain worldview, which is not very, equality or women-centric or a feminist or even humanist worldview, I would say. So how we approach the whole religion and what is spirituality in Islam? Jahanara will, sort of confirm this. We have seen so many women in burqa, in hijab, coming from, lower socioeconomic background. How much faith, how they have so much faith in Allah and in their Prophet. And in fact, their faith is that my Allah cannot be unjust to me. My Allah cannot be unkind to me. So, all this rocket science that we have converted our religion into, that basically serves the ends of patriarchy and perpetuates this kind of, segregated and very oppressive order.
As I was saying that earlier, it was difficult because of the circumstances around this conversation. It's difficult to have honest conversations about what churn is needed within the Muslim community for itself, because then the moment you start pointing out faults or problems or crises within the Muslim community, it's deemed as if you're playing into the hands of Hindu right forces, which is, and it's sad because in the same way, it imprisons the Muslims then in some regressive frame as well. So, like every community, like Hindus have had to go through reform processes, and it's a constantly evolving thing. So even a crisis like this can be used as a good opportunity.
Yes.
Create discussion,
So even on the hijab question, the intolerance in some of the liberal sections about any view other than their own is shocking. It's ghastly. I can understand if the right is intolerant, because right never propagates tolerance. They are very clear that we won't tolerate anybody who doesn't agree with us. But the liberals' is a professed value is tolerance and solidarity and whatnot. But that's not being demonstrated even on the hijab question, Shoma. I'm sorry to say this. So all I'll say is that I'm going to be 60 very shortly, in a year or two, and I have only one life to do whatever I believe in. So I'm not going to wait for when the time is right, because the correct time may never come in my lifetime. And there are so many Muslim women who I know who think like this. So yeah.
No, in fact, I was thinking earlier, because when we were chatting, that in this crisis is not a good time to really point what are the problems with hijab, and there's a lot of debate. Should feminists be talking about it? There are a lot of people taunting liberals, saying, oh, now you are protecting regressive practices which hold women down just because you're anti-Hindutva. But I was thinking that, this can be a good trigger to have conversations, because even Hindu reform, Raja Ram Mohan Roy and others, the reform process began during colonialism itself, You weren't saying that, oh, if we bring up issues of sati and etc., we'll be playing into the Oriental or the British colonial image of Hindus, So I think all of us have to break free of the kind of constraints that we are feeling. And definitely, like, just wearing certain things, like I said, if it is the responsibility of men not to look in a avaricious way at women, then that's the male responsibility. Why should we always call on women? So.
Of course. I cannot agree more.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jahanara. We'll see what the courts have to say, but thank you for having this open conversation with me. Thank you very much.